start. The eating, the sun smut. We get it, okay? 3 very fit, wonderful people. No bad habits about them at all. Of course, former Liberal MP in the Federal Parliament, rock star that is Nicole Flynn. So good to see you. The wonderful Keith Pitt, of course, in and around Bundaberg, the man who'd like to represent Keppel at the state election in Queensland, running for One Nation, is, of course, James Ashby. One and all, hello. Nicole, I'll start with you because I saw it all on Insta. There she was. Farm, flag, diesel truck. How did you celebrate Australia Day, darling?
Well, Paul, we were down here working hard on the farm. We're in between Kingston, Southeast and Robe in the beautiful state of South Australia. And my mum, dad and I spent all day with our sunscreen and our hats on, of course, Paul, following your sun-safe message.
Thank you.
But we were taking the rams out and drenching the sheep and then returning them all to their paddocks. But, Paul, I can tell you what we weren't doing. We weren't watching the cricket or the tennis because our household has boycotted both. Dad started the trend. We fully supported his decision until our national sports codes decide to actually remember that they're Australian and representing all Australians, and until they stop boycotting our national day or telling us that we can't celebrate living in what is the best country on the face of the earth, we're not going to support them.
Yep, I repeat, what about 2
million
people? 2 million people vote Greens. Okay, great. There's far more who don't, Liberal, Labor and all in between. And they're the ones that were out and about in the farm or with the family on the weekend. How was it in Bundy, Keith? What'd you do?
Oh, I snuck down to the Woodgate Beach Community Hall. It's about 45 minutes south of me. Everything gets a flag there, mate.
Yes.
Everything. Every table, every window, even the pieces of fruit have a bit of a flag stuck in them. And it was a really good breakfast and you know, great for them. And congratulations to those who won the community awards. I snuck back for a quick sparring round with your mate Kieran Gilbert.
Yes.
And then, unlike Nicole, I threw the thongs and the shorts on and I watched a couple of hours of cricket because I wanted to see how many people turned out with an Australian flag. And guess what? It was thousands. I was pretty happy to see them at the Gabba. And congratulations to the West Indies. They deserved to win. They're the best team on the day.
I agree. James, did you get an Australian flag somewhere on the jet ski?
Oh, mate, we keep the Australian flag up out the front of the house all year round, so that's typical for us. But here in Yeppoon, mate, we weren't talking about stolen land. We were talking about stolen cars because juvenile crime's through the roof here. But more importantly, we're having ice cream licking competitions.
I love it. Good boy.
We're having ice cream licking competitions on the beachfront in Yeppoon, and Side Hustle were on stage, mate. It was very good.
How good. Great name for a band. All right, let's talk about bracket creep because that is, surprise, surprise, devil in the detail. Just like all, again, Nicole, I do love the way the sort of, you know, political access media thing works, right? Which is, and normally, you know, there'd be a little mini budget. They all sit in the room and they're handed out, you know, documents that they barely read, and then they all ask each other, have you found anything? Have you seen anything? I know, because I've been in the damn room with these people as they ask. Well, of course, slowly but surely it was all fed out that the $15 tax cut was going to make its way towards people. The talking point for Labor MPs is this is literally the solution to cost of living. The Prime Minister says, give us credit because we're reacting to the economic circumstances. But last year is when they took $1,500 off 10 million workers.
That's right.
And bracket creep will be $28 billion over 10 years. Oh, yeah, on top of that, he's a liar.
Look, you can't say that it's going well again this year for the Prime Minister. I mean, I think on top of leaving the tax cuts aside, Paul, he desperately needed a circuit breaker. And at the moment, this does seem to be the change in debate that the PM desperately needed. Look, they've got a by-election in Dunkley at the moment that they're facing. They'll have one when former Prime Minister Scott Morrison retires. So he, of course, the Prime Minister and Labor want people thinking that they're going to get some great tax break. But if the coalition can get out the message that actually the government's going to be, in essence, $28 billion better off for these alleged tax cuts, then that may well help us. But it's not a simple message to get across. But I really think that on top of everything, The Prime Minister needed a circuit breaker to stop people thinking about, record power prices, about interest rate rises, about the fact that he was flying all over the world and ignoring cost of living pressures here in Australia all of last year. And all of a sudden, he's trying to look like he's actually doing something about it, as you have already remarked at the start of your show.
So, James, what cuts through? I know sort of philosophically where we're all going to land here, but just in terms of what people remember, will they remember I'm doing this for Middle Australia, or do they remember I'm a man of my word, or do they remember liar in the lodge? Like, what's actually going to land? Because the Prime Minister's message will be amplified so aggressively through all of the minions in the media, but I think when people actually work out it's $14, $25 or $40 a week, they go, hang on, this isn't even a KFC bucket full of water that you're throwing at the fire.
Well, Scott Morrison knows how crippling and damaging the word liar is.
Yeah.
Remember when the president of France called him a liar? That was one bloke. Well, here you've got 26 million Australians that now know this Prime Minister as nothing but a liar. And that is what's going to stain his reputation until he calls the next election. I was having a look earlier. The people that he's punishing are those people, OK, you might earn $165,000 a year, but the average price to buy a house here in Queensland now is around $690,000. That's the average cost.
Yep.
Now, I went onto the Commonwealth Bank calculator today and I checked it out. If you earn $165,000, you've got 3 kids, you've got a missus, and you're the only one working, you're capped out at borrowing $415,000. Now, you've got to have a mighty big deposit to be able to buy the average house for you and your kids, because when you take into consideration the cost of fuel, the cost of obviously having at least one car in the family, if not 2 when you've got a family of that size, plus, the groceries and everything else, he is hurting people that are just trying to make ends meet with a couple of kids, trying to get into their own home. So he can talk about trying to help out the low-income earners, but when we seriously looked at putting this package together, I was at those negotiating tables with Malcolm Roberts and Pauline Hanson when the Coalition put this tax break through. We gave those people on lower incomes the tax break immediately, and we said, look, in 5 years' time, those earning a little bit more, we'll make sure that the tax break is passed on to them. He's just spat in the face of so many Australians, so many people that want to work hard to try and get ahead with their families. I'm sorry, I hope Peter Dutton realises he needs to fight the Prime Minister on this decision. Don't just lay down, put these arguments forward.
Will you be pleased to know I was in the paddocks of a farm out the back of Ipswich, Tarampa, talking to a young bloke who's not even 30. His name's Mick, and he was not particularly political, but he was a bloke who was absolutely doing his finances as a young bloke who gets his hands dirty about trying to work out where the bracket creep kicks in or not, because his goal this year was to try to get as close to the 200 as possible, and now it all fiddles him up. So, again, Keith, we'll see where it goes. I mean, again, yes, no started 60-40, yes, and it ended the other way around. So how it looks at the start is not how it always looks at the end. But I want to give you a preview of how the government is going to try to deal with its detractors. Of course, they'll turn around and say, oh, forget that, fat idiot at night on Sky News. That's whatever, right? Whatever, I couldn't care less. The feeling's mutual. But this is the message that comes when the Financial Review works out that bracket creep's going to get you $28 billion. Have a look.
So we are providing substantial tax relief up and down the income scale, but with a bigger emphasis on Middle Australia. By putting the old $120,000 threshold back in at $135,000, by putting the $180,000 threshold up to $190,000, we are returning bracket creep. And we are doing that in a way which recognises there's more than one way to return bracket creep. We are returning bracket creep where it matters most and where it hurts the most, which is in Middle Australia.
Oh, so now they're returning bracket creep, but apparently anyone who talks about bracket creep is clutching at straws, Keith.
Well, I'll be clutching at plenty of straws, I think, Paul, because if you're a teacher out there and you want to be a principal, Jim Chalmers has taken your money. And if you're in the health system and you want to be a nursing unit manager, well, Jim Chalmers is going to take more of your money. If you're a fly-in, fly-out worker, he's already taken your money. He just took a heap off you. And if you're one of those hard-working individuals that is taking extra shifts, working extra hours, working second jobs, just trying to make ends meet, well, he's just put things back in that's going to take more of your money from you. And I don't think the Australian people will be fooled. $28 billion extra into the government's coffers. This is not a good deal. And everyone that I'm talking to tells me that it won't even cover the increase in their power bills if you're on the bottom end of the wages scale. So Jim Chalmers, he struts around like he wants a medal for this. And I think the Australian people will see right through them.
Well, I talked about this on Sunday Showdown a couple of hours ago, but I'll repeat it now, which is, Nicole, the other shoe to drop here that is a problem for the Prime Minister, right? Now, he's sort of thinking about things, you know, as I say, he's not playing 4D chess, he's playing, you know, 1D checkers and probably even 1D tiddlywinks, if you remember the game. You know, this is not a great mind at work, right? But he is a politician who thinks he's in a sweet spot here. So he lied about this. We all know he lied about $2.75 on power bills. Now, if there is an election in 2025, the promise was by 2025, power bills are down by $275. Now, no doubt they'll turn around and say, well, you don't count it from the day we became the government. You count it from 2 weeks ago, and it's the wholesale price because we did. No, the reality is, as I said to everyone, night after the election, take the bill from May 2022, bang, on the fridge and compare and contrast. If it's $2.75 down, vote Labor. But the chance that it's going to be 4/5 of you know what. And Nicole, this is where the liar bit kicks in. And this is the bit that becomes the punish, is that they think they've got all these very clever little messages, you know, move the this and carry the one and we'll pass, you know, returning bracket creep. But when my word is my bond, but it wasn't about your tax and it's not about your power bill, then guess where the third strike is for Australians?
Well, absolutely, Paul. But, you know, add on to that, as we know, interest rates that don't seem to be going down. It'll be fascinating to see what happens there this year as well. And cost of living. I mean, they've got their grocery inquiry. Goodness knows what on earth that's actually going to achieve. And again, way too late. So, you know, the coalition's our advertising campaign during the last election has sadly proven to be very accurate.
Correct.
The line was, it won't be easy under Albanese, and the proof that we are currently living is that it isn't easy under Albanese, and it can only get worse.
See, and again, this is where, I mean, you guys understand this because you watch this show, right? But to the wider people who just sort of hear kind of the noise, not because they're dumb or anything, just they're busy, they've got something else on, other interests, right? Is that this is when, okay, a message that didn't work at one election still echoes and helps to define how a party performs for the next 3 years, all right? We'll all see where it lands. At this stage, I think we're sort of talking more about majority or minority government at this stage, and certainly if Labor holds on in Dunkley, they'll be going as soon as they possibly can. In August, and I wouldn't be surprised if they turn around and find a way to give back the $1,500. If they do that, I'll give them credit for it, but I won't be saying you should be voting for them. But the concept of how often you'll put up with a lie, remember the polling information as well in focus groups that were coming out of Redbridge, where they were saying that people are saying, look, you know, sort of the incompetent thing has started to kick in. So if incompetent and liar, we all know that the runway runs out pretty bloody quickly. All right, quick break, back with more. I want to talk about some of the crazy that's around right now. Most recent example is the neo-Nazi garbage that we saw in Sydney this weekend. But how does the majority reassert itself over the minority here? Do we unmask all of them? We'll get to that next. Thank you so much for watching. Keith Pitt, Federal MP in and around Bundaberg. James Ashby from One Nation, hoping to be the next member for Keppel in Queensland. And she's seen federal politics and she's loving to hang out with us here at Sky News. She's a lady of her word, as is her family, none other than the wonderful Nicole Flint. So, this weekend, now, like most people, again, you're kind of half paying attention, three times, there was an attempt from supposed neo-Nazis to gather. They were able to be intercepted on trains. They were eventually intercepted in a park, quite correctly. The Premier of New South Wales, he responds about these people and how there's no room for them in polite or even impolite society. And I agree with him. Anyone who covers their face while screaming or planning to do anything else in public like this, well, they deserve to be unmasked. Here's what he said.
Police are meeting these obnoxious and appalling racists head-on in New South Wales streets. And the message I would say really loud and clear is those who are attempting to menace people in an anonymous way. In New South Wales, the police have the ability to unmask you. So in front of your family, your friends, your employers, your co-workers, you'll be exposed as a massive racist.
Agree completely. But Keith, where was such action after October the 8th, when the people were at the front of the New South Wales government-run Opera House saying gas the Jews? Now, again, this is not about trying to deflect and quick move to the other side. I'm saying the neo-Nazis, no problems with them, the full force of the law. But I say anyone who is so nutty that they start getting into this place where you know, this person has to go from the country and that person has to go from the country and this group of people shouldn't exist, and then we start to get even more violent than there, then society has to respond like the New South Wales Premier did. But I'd like the same response to people who said gas the Jews, and those images went around the world, Keith.
Paul, Australia is a land of extremes. It's not a land for extremists. Extremists, they're not welcome here. Well said. We won't have this. I'll be that firm, mate. We will not have this. It is unacceptable, and I don't care whether it's the calling for gassing of the Jews or it's neo-Nazis. It is not acceptable to the Australian people. It's not acceptable to me as a Member of Parliament. And if there is action to be taken, well, I'll guarantee you the opposition will stand with the Labor Party and the Federal Labor Government if that is what is required. But, mate, I'd ask you to cast your mind back. You remember the big hoo-ha about face coverings a few years ago and everyone was a racist, etc., etc.? Well, it would have applied to all of these individuals. So I think there's actually something to be said for some of these issues that have been dealt with over a period of time. Correct. But I'll say it again, mate. We won't have this, not in this country. It is unacceptable. This is Australia, so pull your heads in. The other thing we should be looking at, Paul, and I'll just be really brief, we should get rid of all of those social media accounts which are anonymous, because they just work themselves into a frenzy. I agree. You have so many people who think they can do whatever they like on social media. The impact on our kids, particularly on young teenagers, and the tragic circumstances that occur there, I think we should act on this regardless of what the social media companies want, regardless of what it does and impacts on their share prices. I don't care. We need to act. I couldn't put it better. James, I mean, again, it just feels, and okay, we know there's an awful lot of protests, and I think that sort of protests don't quite have the power that they used to, but the type of stuff, be it somebody stopping traffic on the Harbour Bridge because of climate change, or somebody holding a banner saying, you know, decolonise, or there's a person saying gas the Jews, or the people who are in this sort of my way or the highway world, it's not middle Australia. It's not even sort of passionate Australia to the left or to the right.
None of these people went out there with the intention of harmony. They went out for the intention of harassment and chaos. And look, we're not interested in our party. You're not patriots. You're nothing of the kind. Exactly. You're thugs. And when you put that ski mask on and you dress in black, you're there to intimidate and frighten. And not to mention, you know, Australia Day is supposed to be a day for families. And what you did out there, I don't care who you think you are, who you think you represent, you're not representing the majority of Australians who just went out there over the weekend for a peaceful, fun weekend. Whatever your reasons for being out on the streets were, to celebrate Australia Day or condemn it, I don't care. Take the bloody masks off, and if you've got something to say it in full view so we know exactly who you are. And I'm 100% with Keith on that fact on social media. Keith makes a really good point. Well, and also the other issue here too is that you end up giving the extremist on the other side, the bogey man, woman, person, you know, we're very inclusive here, that they are looking for with whatever the argument is that they're trying to make. All right, Nicole, you can start us off with a practice we do here on Sunday nights, which is you've got to give me a bold prediction for the week ahead. This is legally binding, okay? What do you think is absolutely set in stone, definitely happening this week, apart from more fun at the farm?
Well, I think Anthony Albanese is going to have a shocker, and his first week back in Parliament, which I think is next week. I'm losing track of days at the moment, Paul, where I'm a bit busy. I think he's going to have a shocker. I think we're going to hold him, well, everyone who can see through his lies, we're all going to hold him to account, and he is going to have another terrible week as people understand what the alleged tax cuts really mean for them.
Bloody oath. All right, give me bumper stickers, boys. I'm out of time here. Keith?
Well, there'll be a deal already done with the Greens in the Senate. It'll wipe out all of the tax cuts for the higher income earners at the top bracket. And you can guarantee that's already done because that's what the communists want.
Good point. James?
Distract.
Yeah,
That's what
well
it'll come down to this week.
Well said. That's why we stay focused here, because it really annoys them. Thank you, guys. Do appreciate it. Again, enjoy the rest of your weekend. All right, quick break. Back with more here on Paul Murray Live. About 4 minutes away from the Royal Report. And tonight, I'm telling you, had a look at their rundown. One of their best.